Hello beautiful people, so today I wanted to do a requested video. The video is requested by Lydia Sese, and she says, hi, kindly share with us the kind of questions set in exams and how to answer them. And so today I'll be doing that using a past paper, and I'll be using a psychology past paper because I thought of using at least one from first year or second year, because from third year it could look a little bit more complicated. So I'll be using that paper to show you guys how to answer. That is MCQs, short answer questions and long answer questions. If you're new here, my name is Lois Odor, and if you have any other video suggestion, you can leave it down on the comment section, or you can DM me on Instagram or Facebook, that is at Lois Odor or at Odor's Nursing World. And so I'll be starting with the long answer questions, so don't forget to subscribe. So when it comes to the long answer questions, they'll first give you a scenario. Most of the time it's usually a scenario. Then let's say they say Mr. X came in presenting with this and this, then they might tell you to like state the diagnosis, or at times they might already given you the diagnosis. Let's say Mr. X presented with hypertension, then they might tell you to define something or to state the meaning of something. Then after that they might tell you to state the symptoms that he might present with, or maybe to differentiate something, just a little bit about the hypertension thing. Then most likely, usually on the third part of that long answer question, they usually ask you to manage, and this is where the marks usually, because most of the time usually even 20 marks, so this is where the marks lie. Because if you can be able to get the 20 marks and then you get maybe 20 from short answers, you'll only require to get 10 from the MCQs for you to be able to reach the pass mark. So it becomes so easy if you really know how to answer the long answer questions. So when it comes to the first part, usually like more specific, because it can be hypertension, it can be like something else that maybe I won't know about. So when it comes to the other part, the third part of that long answer question, when they tell you to manage this condition, most of the time you start by the specific management, like the medications and all the other specific managements for that condition that you're given. Then there usually other conservative management that usually add to the specific management that will be able to help you get that 20 marks, because at times you find that the specific management, they usually like only 4 or 5, and when you've written 4, you cannot write 4 things and expect to get 20 marks. They expect you to add other things. And today I wanted to give you a certain acronym that we used to use when you were in college that helped us to like add more to the management, that is to the conservative management. And so we used to use the acronym APOSIDENTAP. I'll write it here so that you can see. So you write APOSIDENTAP, and then you start with A. So A is to admit, because most likely when the patient comes, the first thing you do is to admit. And also A is for ABC. ABC is airway, breathing and circulation, because let's say it is a condition that has a breathing like something about difficulty in breathing. You first of all look at the airway. Is the airway blocked? And then breathing, you look for the like CO2, and then you see if you have to like give oxygen. For the circulation, do you have to give fluids? You see, after ABC you go to P. P is positioning. Let's say the patient needs to be in a proper position, or whichever position, depending on what you're managing, there's usually a certain position that the patient is supposed to be in. So P is for position. And then O is to observe vital signs. Like this is usually a must. Like as nurses, for every patient that comes to the hospital, you have to observe the vital signs. Like I remember we used to say vital signs is just a free mark. You cannot forget vital signs. So O is for observing the vital signs. Then S is for sleep or rest, because most of the time, depending on condition, let's say even the patient went for surgery, you need, like the patient needs to sleep, the patient needs to rest. So S is for sleep and rest. Then I is for investigations. You need to carry out, so you say make sure that the investigation have been carried out, because most of the time you need to carry out investigation for you to be able to know maybe the cause of this disease. Then D is for diagnosis, like for the medical, the nursing diagnosis, you have to know how to, you can even indicate about writing the nursing diagnosis, just say something about that. Then E is for elimination. This is whereby you start writing, make sure you have an input and output chart. If it's someone whereby you have to like measure the urine output, you say about measuring the urine output. Elimination, depending with what you are managing, elimination, you know how you put that. Then N is for nutrition. Nutrition, let's say it is a condition that requires low sodium diet or high protein diet. So you need to, like, you cannot just write high protein diet in any condition. You need to know why you need high protein diet in that condition. Then you will know what to do with the nutrition part. Then T, it comes to treatment. Like make sure that the patient has been given a certain treatment, but if you don't know the dosage, don't like guess the dosage, because that can make you lose that mark. You cannot just write ceftriaxone 2000 ml and you are not even sure about that. So if you're sure, you can write the dosage and the drug, that can be of advantage. But if you're not sure, it's better like to just say you give the medication according to the treatment sheet. Yeah. And then A is for advice, because one thing about nurses, we should be able to know how to do patient education. Patient education is so important. So you give patient education, because most of the time, by the time you've reached to this point of advice, you're almost discharging the patient, because they usually say give the management of this patient from admission to discharge. So when you're reaching this point, you're almost to discharge. So you'll be able to teach the patient, let's say it's about intake, about the maybe exercise, drink a lot of water, and maybe take the medication at the right time, and other specific patient education according to the condition that the patient has. Then P is for psychological support, because at times maybe it's something that has maybe distorted their body image, and you need to talk to them about that. So you can add, like, there's so many other things apart from the aposidentap, there's so many other things that you usually can add to be able to manage this patient, and add as a conservative management. So that was it for the long answer questions. Then when you go to the short answer questions, so most of the time short answer questions, they usually give list, state, differentiate, explain, such kind of thing. So you should be able to know the difference between listing, stating, explaining, differentiating. How do you do this? Because if they tell you to list and then you start like giving an entire full page explanation, like you're really making it so hard, and at times someone may not read it through, and they might even just do. If you get a really difficult lecturer, they can just do. So when they tell you to list, that just means that you just give the exact thing, and then you just, let me give you an example. I think working with an example will make this easier. So for this paper, that is question number 2, it had a list. So they said list signs and symptoms of stress. So you don't have to talk a lot about stress. So you just list, like, the patient isolates themselves, the person is annoyed, and maybe the person neglects his same, the person becomes arrogant, the person has a low self-esteem. So you just state it briefly. And then when it comes to stating, when they tell you to state, you have to say something about it, because when they say list, you just give it like the brief part, but when they say state, you have to add something. Like, let me give you an example. They say state factors that influence growth and development. If they said list, you could have just said hereditary, nutrition, education, culture. But then if they say state, you have to say something about nutrition. Like, you can just write nutrition, and then you say something like, when the baby is not given a good balanced diet, and that is adequate to be able to provide the body requirements, the baby might not be able to grow in terms of size. So you say something about it. When it comes to hereditary, you write hereditary, then you write someone usually acquires particular genes from their parents. Like, let's say someone is short, most likely the baby might end up being short too. So you write, and then you kind of state something about it. You just don't leave it as a brief statement. You kind of state something about it. And then another thing that they usually use is explain. When they say explain, you have to kind of give it in detail. It is also most likely like state, but it depends, because like for this question paper, they had given explain 5 defense mechanisms, but then it is 2 marks. So 2 marks, you really don't have to talk so much. At times you can explain 5 defense mechanisms, but it is 15 marks. Like, most likely not this question, but there's some questions, but you might find even 15 marks. That means it is a question that really requires you to be able to explain a bit more. So that means because of the weight of that marks, you have to explain a little bit more. But this is 2 marks, you have to explain the 5, but it is kind of like stating, because it's just 2 marks. You cannot be able to write 2 pages for 2 marks. You get me? So you will explain 5 defense mechanisms. So you write, like, let's say you start with denial. You write denial, like, and then you explain something like, there's a situation whereby the individual refuses to accept the situation. That is just it. You don't have to explain so much, depending on the mark here. And then you try and bring in another thing, like, let's say compensation, whereby the individual realizes he or she does not perform well, and then they drift their attention to something else. So you try and kind of explain it in a little bit more detail. Let me show you how it looks. So you see, denial, and then a brief statement, compensation, a brief statement, rationalization, a brief statement, regression, a brief statement. And see, it is just 2 marks. So that is how we just write it. You write it, and then you give a brief explanation. Then when it comes to list, when they say Oh, I already talked about list. The other one is differentiate. Yeah. So when it comes to differentiate, the question here was differentiate between operant and classical conditioning. So you can choose to differentiate using a kind of table whereby you write operant conditioning on one side, classical conditioning on the other side, or you can give it as a statement. So like this one, which is here, it has been differentiated, which is using a line. So you write operant, then you write classical. So you write operant conditional by stimulus, classical conditioning is natural, and then you just do that. But then if you can also use statement whereby you say when it comes to operant, conditioning is by stimulus, while classical, so you see, use those conjunction kind of words to try and like use it as a whole statement, if you're getting me. So that is differentiating, and that is for the short answer questions. And then when it comes to the MCQs, so MCQs is the ABCD stuff. So when it comes to the MCQs, the first thing I'd like to tell you is you should learn how to read the question keenly first before you answer, because at times when you read it so fast, you might end up missing a statement. I remember I used to fail some questions only because I never got to read the word not, because they can tell you explain why you should, and you've already like you haven't read the word not, or which one is not. Like, make sure you read the statement so well, and that is why it's good to read the question twice before answering. So let's use one example here. So number 2, to say according to the hierarchy of needs, indicate the sequence of basic needs. Yeah, so the first thing you do, you first try and remember from your head, like what is the hierarchy, like what is the sequence of the hierarchy of needs. Usually start with physiological needs, safety, love and belonging, self-esteem, then self-actualization. So you already know the answer. And then when you come here, you see question A, it starts with belonging, that is already out. Question B starts with self-esteem, that is already out. Higher. Question C starts with physiological, so you can still put that. Then D, physiological, E, physiological. Then in C, physiological, then it follows self-actualization. Self-actualization is usually the highest, so that cannot be. In D, physiological, safety, love and belonging, that is correct. Then E, physiological, safety, love and belonging, but then E has self-esteem and self-actualization. So D is out because it doesn't have self-esteem and self-actualization. So the answer is E. So it is just as simple as that. And at times you should read it because they might even tell you to start from the highest to the lowest, you see. So you should just read the questions keenly. Then you can use the elimination method, especially if you really not sure about the answer. You can use the elimination method, because if they give you a question, you can just see and say this one is not correct, because I already know the answer to the question to this, how the question to this can look like, so this one is not correct. So if you don't know the answer, you can use the elimination, you can even get it right. So yeah, I think I kind of helped you guys to realize how the questions are usually set and how to answer them. But still, if you have any other question, you can leave it down in the comment section and I might be able to help you with that. Wow, I just can't imagine. I've been kind of going back to these books, but yeah, I'm here to help you guys. But if you still have any other thing that you want me to talk about, you can leave it down in the comment section or send me a message and I'll be able to talk about that. So thank you for watching this video and see you on my next video. Bye bye.